the hidden muscle weakness that causes hip fractures. What if I told you that right now, as you're listening to this, there's a silent weakness in your body that could determine whether you'll be walking independently at 75 or struggling to get out of bed? What if I told you that this weakness affects 9 out of 10 Americans over 50, yet most people have never heard of it? And what if I told you that understanding this one thing could be the difference between living your golden years with vitality and confidence versus becoming another heartbreaking statistic? In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you a discovery that has completely changed how we understand hip fractures and falls in older adults. More importantly, I'm going to show you exactly what you can do about it, starting today. Let me begin with some facts that might surprise you. In America, someone suffers a hip fracture every 90 seconds. That's nearly 1,000 people every single day. The financial cost to our healthcare system exceeds $12 billion annually, but the human cost is far more devastating. Research published in leading medical journals shows that within 1 year of a hip fracture, approximately 20% of patients lose their lives. Among survivors, half never regain their previous level of mobility, and 1 in 4 requires long-term care in a facility. Now, here's what's truly shocking about these numbers. They're almost entirely preventable. Not through expensive medications or complex surgical procedures, but through understanding and addressing a condition that most healthcare providers barely acknowledge exists. For decades, the medical community has focused on bone density as the primary risk factor for fractures. We've been told that as we age, our bones naturally weaken, and fractures are simply an inevitable part of getting older. Millions of Americans take calcium supplements and bone-strengthening medications based on this understanding. Yet fracture rates continue to climb year after year. Recent research from prestigious institutions has revealed that we've been looking at this problem completely backwards. The primary culprit isn't weak bones, it's weak muscles. Specifically, it's the weakness of one particular muscle group that serves as the foundation for everything your body does, your gluteal muscles. This condition has been termed gluteal amnesia by researchers, and it represents one of the most significant yet under-recognized health threats facing Americans today. Your gluteal muscles, commonly known as your glutes, are the largest and most powerful muscles in your human body. They're designed to be your body's engine, responsible for powering nearly every movement you make while standing and walking. When functioning properly, your glutes serve multiple critical roles. They stabilize your pelvis, support your spine, control hip movement, and maintain proper alignment throughout your entire body. They're also rich with sensory receptors that constantly communicate with your brain about your body's position in space, an ability called proprioception that's essential for balance and coordination. But here's where the problem begins. The modern American lifestyle has created the perfect conditions for gluteal shutdown. Consider your typical day. You wake up and immediately sit on the edge of your bed. You sit in your car during your commute. You sit at a desk or table for work. You sit for meals. You sit while watching television or using electronic devices. You sit for an average of 13 hours per day, according to recent surveys. When you maintain a seated position for extended periods, several things happen to your body at the muscular level. The muscles at the front of your hips, called hip flexors, become progressively shorter and tighter. Meanwhile, your gluteal muscles are placed in a lengthened, stretched position for hours at a time. Over months and years, this creates a condition where your hip flexors essentially pull your pelvis forward, while your glutes become weak and unable to contract effectively. Your body is remarkably adaptive, and when your glutes stop functioning properly, it doesn't simply give up. Instead, it develops compensation patterns. Your lower back muscles begin attempting to do the work that your glutes should be performing. Your hip flexors become chronically overactive. Your core muscles weaken because they're not receiving proper support from below. Your knees begin rotating inward because there's no gluteal stability to maintain proper leg alignment. This creates what movement specialists call a kinetic chain dysfunction, a cascade of problems that affects every joint in your body from your feet all the way up to your neck. Most importantly for our discussion today, it creates instability at the hip joint itself. When your glutes aren't providing adequate stability and control, your hip joint essentially becomes loose within its socket. Instead of controlled, stable movement, you develop what researchers describe as micro-instabilities, tiny, unconscious movements that your brain registers as threats to your safety. This instability has profound effects on bone health through a principle discovered over 150 years ago called Wolff's Law. This law states that bone tissue adapts to the forces placed upon it. When muscles contract properly and create appropriate stress on bones, the bones respond by becoming stronger and denser. However, when muscle function is compromised, bones don't receive the proper stimulus for strength development. Even more concerning, hip instability creates uneven pressure distribution across the bone structure. Instead of forces being evenly distributed across the entire hip area, they become concentrated in small regions, creating stress points that are vulnerable to fracture even with minimal trauma. A groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research tracked over 4,000 adults aged 50 and older for a decade. The researchers measured both bone density and gluteal muscle strength at the study's beginning. Their findings revolutionized our understanding of fracture risk. Participants with weak gluteal muscles had more than 3 times the risk of suffering a hip fracture, regardless of their bone density measurements. This research was supported by additional studies from Harvard Medical School, which found that gluteal weakness was present in 87% of hip fracture patients, but only 11% of people in the same age group who had never experienced a fracture. The researchers concluded that muscle weakness was actually a more significant predictor of fracture risk than age, gender, or previous fracture history. But the connection goes beyond just bone strength. When your glutes aren't functioning properly, you also lose much of your body's natural fall prevention system. Your glutes contain thousands of specialized sensors that constantly monitor your body's position and movement. When these muscles are weak or not activating properly, your brain literally doesn't receive accurate information about where your body is positioned in space. Imagine walking across a room, but your brain is receiving unclear or delayed information about where your feet are landing, how your weight is distributed, or whether you're beginning to lose balance. By the time your conscious mind recognizes a problem, it's often too late for your body to make the quick corrections needed to prevent a fall. Research has shown that people with gluteal amnesia have significantly slower reaction times when responding to balance challenges. They're also more likely to experience what's called freezing episodes, moments when the brain becomes overwhelmed by conflicting sensory information and temporarily stops sending signals to the muscles. So how can you determine if you're affected by gluteal amnesia? There are several indicators that you can assess right now, wherever you are. First, consider your posture when standing or sitting. If you tend to stand with your weight shifted forward onto your toes, if your lower back feels excessively arched, or if you notice your shoulders rounding forward, these are signs that your glutes may not be providing adequate postural support. Second, pay attention to how you feel when transitioning from sitting to standing. If you experience stiffness, if you need to use your hands to push yourself up from chairs, or if you feel momentarily unsteady when first standing, your glutes likely aren't generating the power they should. Third, observe your walking pattern. Do you take shorter steps than you used to? Do you feel less stable when walking, especially on uneven surfaces? Do you find yourself looking down at the ground more often to watch where you're stepping? These changes often indicate declining gluteal function. Here's a simple assessment you can perform right now. While standing, try to balance on one foot for 30 seconds. Can you do it without holding on to anything? Do you feel stable and controlled, or do you wobble and struggle to maintain your position? People with strong, functional glutes can typically balance on one foot for extended periods without difficulty. Another assessment involves muscle activation. While lying face down, try to squeeze your gluteal muscles as firmly as possible. Can you feel a strong contraction? Does it feel equal on both sides? If you can barely feel the muscles working, or if one side feels significantly weaker than the other, this suggests gluteal amnesia. The presence of chronic pain in certain areas of your body can also indicate gluteal dysfunction. When your glutes aren't working properly, other muscles must compensate for their lack of function. This commonly results in lower back pain, hip discomfort, knee problems, and even issues with your feet and ankles. Now, if you've recognized some of these signs in yourself, please understand that this condition is entirely reversible. Your glutes can be reactivated and strengthened at any age. I've worked with individuals in their 80s and 90s who have dramatically improved their strength, balance, and confidence through targeted interventions. The solution involves 3 distinct phases: reactivation, strengthening, and integration. The reactivation phase focuses on restoring the neural pathways between your brain and your gluteal muscles. This isn't simply about building strength, it's about rebuilding communication that has been disrupted by years of inactivity. One of the most effective reactivation techniques can be performed while lying on your stomach. Place your hands under your forehead and completely relax your body. Now, focus intensely on contracting just your right gluteal muscle. Don't allow your lower back to arch. Don't lift your leg. Simply squeeze the muscle itself. Hold this contraction for 5 seconds, then relax completely for 5 seconds. Repeat this 10 times, then switch to your left side. This exercise begins to restore the connection between your nervous system and your muscles. Another powerful reactivation exercise is the clamshell, but it must be performed correctly. Most people do this exercise wrong, using their hip flexors instead of their glutes. Lie on your side with your knees bent at 90 degrees. Keep your feet together and slowly lift your top knee while keeping your pelvis absolutely stable. The key is to feel the muscle on the side of your hip working, not the muscles in the front of your hip. If you feel it in the front, you're reinforcing the wrong movement pattern. The strengthening phase involves progressively challenging your glutes with resistance exercises, but only after you've reestablished proper activation patterns. The foundation exercise is the glute bridge, but it must be performed with perfect technique. Lie on your back with your knees bent and feet flat on the floor. Before moving, consciously activate your gluteal muscles. Then, drive your heels into the floor and lift your hips by squeezing your glutes, not by arching your lower back. At the top position, your body should form a straight line from your knees to your shoulders. Hold this position for 2 seconds while actively squeezing your glutes, then lower slowly and controlled. The entire movement should be powered by your gluteal muscles, not your lower back. Start with 10 repetitions and gradually increase as your strength improves. Quality is far more important than quantity. It's better to do 5 perfect repetitions than 20 sloppy ones that reinforce poor movement patterns. As you progress, you can advance to single-leg glute bridges, which better simulate the demands of walking and running. The single-leg variation also helps identify and correct any imbalances between your left and right sides, which are extremely common in people with gluteal amnesia. The integration phase involves incorporating proper gluteal function into your daily activities. This includes learning to stand, walk, and move in ways that naturally engage these muscles throughout your day. It's not enough to do exercises for 10 minutes and then return to dysfunctional movement patterns for the remaining 23 hours and 50 minutes. Equally important is addressing the underlying factors that contribute to gluteal amnesia. This means modifying how much time you spend sitting, improving your posture when you do sit, and incorporating regular movement breaks throughout your day. set a timer to remind yourself to stand and move for at least 1 minute every 30 minutes during your workday. When you do sit, make sure you're doing it correctly. Your feet should be flat on the floor, your knees should be at 90 degrees, and your back should be against the chair with a slight natural arch in your lower back. Avoid slouching forward or leaning back excessively, as both positions immediately shut down your gluteal muscles. The way you stand is equally critical. Many people with gluteal amnesia stand with their weight shifted forward onto their toes, their pelvis tilted forward, and their lower back excessively arched. This posture makes it impossible for the glutes to function properly. Instead, practice standing with your weight evenly distributed over your entire feet, your pelvis in neutral position, and your glutes gently engaged. Walking technique also requires attention. People with gluteal amnesia tend to take short, shuffling steps with their feet landing in front of their body instead of underneath it. This creates a braking force with each step and prevents the glutes from properly propelling you forward. Practice taking longer strides with your feet landing directly under your center of gravity. Focus on pushing off with your back foot rather than reaching out with your front foot. Nutrition plays a crucial supporting role in muscle function and bone health. Adequate protein intake becomes increasingly important with age, as your muscles need amino acids to maintain strength and recover from exercise. Most older adults don't consume enough high-quality protein, which contributes to muscle weakness and poor recovery. Aim for at least 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight, focusing on complete proteins like meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Anti-inflammatory foods like fatty fish, leafy greens, and colorful vegetables support muscle function and recovery, while processed foods and excess sugar can impair these processes and promote chronic inflammation that interferes with muscle activation. Certain nutrients deserve special attention for both muscle and bone health. Vitamin D deficiency is extremely common in America and directly impacts both muscle strength and bone health. Low vitamin D levels impair muscle function and increase fracture risk independently of bone density. Most adults need significantly more vitamin D than they're currently getting through food or casual sun exposure. Have your vitamin D level tested and supplement if necessary to achieve optimal levels. Magnesium is another critical nutrient that's involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, including muscle contraction and bone formation. Surveys suggest that most Americans consume inadequate amounts of magnesium due to depleted soil and reliance on processed foods. Good sources include dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. Sleep quality significantly affects muscle recovery and hormone production. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, which is essential for muscle repair and bone formation. Adults need 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep for optimal muscle function and bone health. Poor sleep is also associated with increased fall risk, slower reaction times, and impaired cognitive function that affects balance and coordination. Stress management is often overlooked but plays a crucial role in muscle function and bone health. Chronic stress elevates cortisol levels, which can interfere with muscle protein synthesis and bone formation. High cortisol also increases inflammation and can impair sleep quality, both of which negatively impact recovery and adaptation to exercise. Simple stress reduction techniques like deep breathing, meditation, or gentle stretching can support your physical improvements. Hydration is another factor that directly impacts muscle function. Even mild dehydration can significantly impair muscle strength and coordination. As we age, our sense of thirst becomes less reliable, making it easy to become chronically dehydrated without realizing it. Aim to drink water consistently throughout the day and pay attention to the color of your urine as an indicator of hydration status. The timeline for improvement varies among individuals, but most people begin noticing changes within 2 to 3 weeks of consistent intervention. Neural reactivation often happens relatively quickly. You may feel your glutes working better within just a few days of starting targeted exercises. Strength improvements typically become apparent within 3 to 4 weeks, while significant functional improvements in balance, stability, and movement quality usually develop over 6 to 8 weeks of consistent practice. The key to success is consistency rather than intensity. Daily practice of simple exercises and movement modifications is far more effective than occasional lengthy workout sessions. Your nervous system adapts best to frequent, regular stimulation rather than sporadic, intense efforts. It's also important to progress gradually and listen to your body. Attempting to do too much too quickly can actually reinforce poor movement patterns and potentially cause injury. Start with basic reactivation exercises and progress slowly as your strength and coordination improve. Remember, you're not just building muscle strength, you're retraining your nervous system, which takes time and patience. Prevention is always more effective than treatment, but it's never too late to begin making improvements. The human body maintains remarkable adaptability throughout life, and significant improvements in strength, balance, and function are possible at any age with appropriate intervention and consistent effort. The medical system has traditionally focused on treating problems after they occur, rather than preventing them from developing in the first place. Hip replacement surgery, rehabilitation after fractures, and long-term care represent multi-billion-dollar industries that profit from our collective lack of understanding about gluteal amnesia. However, you have the power to avoid becoming part of these statistics through proactive intervention. Understanding and addressing gluteal amnesia doesn't just reduce your risk of hip fractures, it improves every aspect of your physical function. You'll likely experience better balance, reduced back pain, improved posture, greater confidence in your daily activities, and increased energy levels. Many people also report feeling more capable of activities they had previously avoided due to fear of falling or injury. This information represents a fundamental paradigm shift in how we understand aging and mobility. Rather than accepting physical decline as inevitable, we can take specific, targeted action to maintain and even improve our physical capabilities as we age. The research clearly shows that muscle weakness, not just bone weakness, is the primary culprit in hip fractures. The choice is ultimately yours. You can continue with your current routine and hope that you'll be among the fortunate few who avoid falls and fractures. Or you can take proactive steps to address this hidden weakness and dramatically improve your odds of maintaining independence and vitality throughout your later years. The scientific evidence is clear. Gluteal amnesia is a real condition with serious consequences, but it's also entirely preventable and reversible with the right approach. By understanding this information and taking consistent action, you're not just reducing your risk of hip fractures, you're investing in your long-term quality of life and independence. Your future self will thank you for the steps you take today to address this hidden but critical aspect of healthy aging. The power to change your trajectory is in your hands, and the time to begin is right now. Don't wait until you're part of the statistics. Start taking action today to ensure that you'll be walking confidently and independently for years to come.